Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm Katie, and I'm joined by Kelly and Spencer. You've probably chatted with one of us before if you've ever called in or used our online chat feature. But today we're going to do a refresher webinar. So this will be done in our new look because the new look is live now, and it will be permanent as of February 29th. So we're going to start doing all trainings and just get everyone really familiarized with the new look. We will go through a case fully from start to finish. And then there are other webinars that you can click help and then webinars up here for other webinars pertaining specifically to like income, chapter 13 plans, things that get really, really specific. But today we'll just keep it basic for case data entry. So to start, you have this new case from any page now, and you can click to start a new case. You now have options to add other practice areas that aren't just bankruptcy. If you do any of these, like today's demo will be fully bankruptcy, but if you have other practice areas, you can set those up quickly in your account settings. At the bottom here, you're going to have firm practice areas, and this is how you get those options from that drop down. But when you start those cases, so let me see if I have one, because it has this practice area label after you've added your first one, so Bob case. You have all of our CRM tools. So of course, we don't have the forms preparation yet, but we have all the CRM tools. So you can do their contact information, leave comments. If you have next message, you can text them. You have the document list, tasks, events, so and unlimited client storage. So it's the first step in getting ready to move into multiple practice areas. But anyway, you can start a new case from any page and just know that only bankruptcy options are going to have that forms prep. So once you start your new case, I already have one here, so I'm just going to go into my Rosie Riveter case. And NextChapter was laid out to really work in an intuitive flow, kind of like a TurboTax for bankruptcy attorneys. So as much as you can, we really recommend just going down the line in order, because we're going to do a lot of stuff like reducing data entry. You're going to put in that debtor's name one time. It goes everywhere it needs to go. If they own a property with a claim, it's going to go to AB. The claim's going to go to D. So things like that just reduce all of your data entry. But this first page here is your case dashboard. This is the one page where nothing really goes anywhere. It's just some extra tools for you to use. So updates and reviews, this just takes you to your district notes. So this will differ per district, but just letting you know, like we have e-filing for individual and business cases in the Northern District. We have your plan, we have these event codes. So just additional information as to what we have ready. Contact info lets you save phone numbers and emails for your clients. And then we have this quick info field here too. So quick info field is just going to let you track multiple statuses, all of the different dates that you want to keep track of for your clients. And these all go on your reporting feature. So if you ever want to pull a report of everything, you'll have all of these important dates on here. And all of these dates too, they also go up here to the top right to your events. So you can see all of the upcoming events for your clients. Comments. This is really just beneficial to help kind of keep everyone in your firm in the loop. I see a lot of people copy and pasting emails in here, any payments. And what's cool is it'll have like the user's name on here as well as a timestamp. And you can export these too. So you'll see this little printer icon here, and you'll see it in documents and tasks. And that just means you can export these to a PDF. So if you want to export all comments that everyone's left for Rosie Riveter, you can do so. And then you'll just have an option to hire a virtual paralegal. So if you want to hire a virtual paralegal for any of your cases, right now it's only set up for bankruptcy. It's eventually going to be available on anything. But if you come in, it kind of goes over pricing. Sometimes this is going to differ just based on the different types of cases that you have. But if you click to hire, it's going to ask some additional questions like, is this emergency? Has this been filed? So is this post-petition work? All of this stuff. Once you submit it and pay, we assign it to a virtual paralegal that we work with, and they'll reach out to you directly to help you with the case. So it's really great in helping, get the case filed, get everything prepared, especially with that document collection. And it's cool because they get to use, their NextChapter pros. So they're using NextChapter to do all of that. And then you just have your client portal and your next message features. That's available right now to the Start Plus and our Pro Plus users. At the top right here, These are some additional tools that we have available to everyone. So the document checklist is pretty cool because as you mark things off, it'll export the same way. So you could send this off to Rosie Riveter and let her know like what has and has not been received yet. I see a lot of people email this to their clients just to help keep in line with all those documents. Tasks are more for internal staff, but again, you can hide everything completed just to kind of keep you up to date on what's going on with the tasks. Events are going to be any of those important dates. And then we have a fees option too. So the fees report here, anyone can use this. If you're adding fees and adding payments, it's going to put all your fees as a charge and then all your payments as a payment amount. And you can export this to actually generate an invoice. So it's going to have your client's name, your firm information, and then kind of a running balance down here at the bottom to use as an invoice. Last on this page, there's a timer. So the timer right now, this is only available for our annual plans, but it's tracking as you're working in the case. So when I have this web address open, it's tracking my time. So it's really cool to use for like billing purposes if you bill hourly or you just like to see like what's going on in your case and how long your staff's been working on specific cases. That's always available here too. So I see a question I just want to hop over before I go to the next screen. Is there a way to auto-populate those dates, such as claims bar date or deadline to object? So any dates in Quick Info, if you are an annual plan and we receive your notices, if notices are coming like a 341 hearing or anything like that, we can automate the dates. I have had someone ask me recently to do like a deficiency date because it's always 14 days following the filing date. So things like that where it's really uniform, we should be able to easily add in. For the rest of them, like any other dates that deadline to object for a Chapter 13 plan or things like that, you can customize these, but you would have to add them manually, but then they would go to your calendar at least. So in account settings, you have this quick info field and you have events. This is where you can add any of those event dates. So if you want to add like Chapter 13 objection dates, or you want to add claims deadlines, anything, you can. Again, they will sync with your calendar and they'll show in your cases, but you do at this time have to put the date in yourself. But you can track as many as you want. Okay, moving along, and just to show too, we have these cool little progress bars. So like if I was in here right now, maybe I'm working on case dashboard, then if I click it again and say completed, it's done. So that's a neat way for like your whole staff, if there's a bunch of you, to kind of know which sections have been touched upon and which have not. So as I mentioned, you should work from top down. The only exception being this credit report, you have to do the client profile first. So in client, we're just collecting basic information like what kind of case it is. You'll notice a lot too, like you don't have a joint debtor section until it's a joint case. And now there's your joint debtor profile. But these are things obviously you'd be adding in that joint debtor before pulling the report. But I'll make this just for sake of keeping this simple. This is going to stay individual. So once you do that and then add a debtor profile information and their address, then you can hop up and pull a credit report. We do have to have a residential address on file. So when you're editing addresses, you would say it's a residential address that you rent. Some people get confused and pick rental here. That would be like if your client owned a rental property. Otherwise, it's going to be a residential that they rent or own and save. And at that point, you can pull the credit report. So the credit report is a tri-merge. It's got an individual price of $35, joint of $55, and then it's just going to ask for the social to pull the actual report. The date of birth, the name, the address, all of that's coming from that client profile. But in here, you can select that you authorize us and that it imports everything directly into schedules D and F. Everything goes to F because majority of stuff is going to belong to F, except mortgages and vehicles. It is intelligent enough to put those straight to Schedule D. A few other things I just want to touch upon. A lot of client profiles are self-explanatory. You're just adding in like prior names, spouses, etc. In filing information, this is a lot of information we use to open the case with the court site. So there's a lot that's done on here. Like if your nature of debt's business, you're automatically exempt from the means test. Let's say you have, you're paying your filing fee in installments. Upon clicking this, then we tell the court you intend to pay in installments, but upon clicking the hyperlink, then you can actually fill out that application that gets filed to tell the court how and when you're paying it. So there are those different options in here. And then case number, filing date, 341 hearing, and confirmation date only for notices recipients. But the case number and the filing date, that gets automatically completed upon filing in NextChapter. There are nifty spaces here for trustee and judge, but we're not filling that in automatically at this time. That's just something you would come in and track. There's a few other things in here, like let's say you have an old case that you didn't file for NextChapter. You're able to come in here and choose like a prior date range for the legal data. You can also come in here and manually estimate your credits. This is all stuff from the voluntary petition here, but majority is done for you, but you just have the option to change anything. One thing you will always want to make sure is you have your attorney here. So if your attorney files in multiple districts, you'd pick just whichever district you want to use for those ECF credentials, and then make sure to pick whichever location you want on your petition. And just note at any time you can click this orange preview. And since I'm working on the voluntary petition, it takes me to my voluntary petition, but you can click anything. And it's just a good way to kind of see like how your forms are populating, make sure everything looks good. Let's say I needed to put this business name here on line 4. If you don't know how right away, especially as you're getting started, the Help Center has everything. So if I go to Help Center and I type in line 4, that's my SOFA. I don't want that. I want my voluntary petition, line 4. It tells me go to client profile, go to prior alternate names, and add a business name. So we do have resources available. You're always welcome to chat us. You can click on this little orange smiley face, and there's me, Kelly Spencer, who you're talking to today. But we can help via here. But we do also have that Help Center for a lot of people who want to just kind of help themselves and not deal with waiting for us to respond and stuff like that.
So the next section we'll move to is adding property. And there's actually a few different ways that you can do this. The first thing to note here is that when you do add an address, and if you note that it's a residential property that you own, this will automatically filter down to your real property. So you can see that address here. NextChapter links the information for like claims and the property a few different ways. The first way would be if you are choosing to import the client's credit report. Like Katie said, those claims all go to unsecured non-priority claims except for mortgages and vehicles. So when you're adding in your property, you can add a new property here. So we'll edit the one that we have. And say there's a lien against this property. What you can do is select the claim that was already filtered from your credit report and select it here. So that just links the two pieces of information, which is pretty nice. You can also, down at the claim, you can also link the asset that you've entered from the claim. So let's say we're in this claim, we want to link this asset to this claim. Now the two are linked. It just reduces a lot of double entry or having to enter multiple properties multiple times. The last way that you could enter property would just be to create a whole new property. And then from there, from this screen, you can actually add the lien and add the exemption. So you can just all in one swoop do it. You can add it from claims. It's really whatever your preference is. Yeah, I think that's.
Okay, moving along, we have now, after you've entered in all of your property, so once you've got your claims in there, you can start to enter in all of your personal property. Just make sure you always keep your vehicles owned and vehicles leased separate. So vehicles owned is obviously going to let you enter any vehicles and add your lien for D. And then the difference being the leases, those go straight to Schedule G. So if you have a lease in here and you add the lease directly here, this always, I'll just do one really quickly so that we can see that it pulls automatically over to Schedule G. So now when I save this lease on that Mazda and I go down to my executory contracts, there's my Mazda. So it's important to just keep these like correctly tied together so that they look proper on the forms. But back up to property. So as you're entering in your personal property, as Kelly just went over for the claims, it's the same thing. When you're entering in, whether it's real property or unsecured property, you can add exemptions directly to everything. So when you're adding your exemptions, these lines here, that just tells you what line item they're coming for schedule, like wedding and jewelry is on line 12 of AB. So that's what those numbers mean. But you can do a few things in here. If you're on a joint case and your district lets you double the limit, you can click to double the limit in here. And then if you also don't want to exempt like an actual physical dollar amount, you can put anything in here. So even if it's just 0 and save it. And when you go to your property analysis tab now, we show you everything in here. So this is going to show you the value of all the property you've entered, any liens against those properties, what their equity is, and then their exemption status. So if you have things like this that are unexempt, that's a Jeep we just entered, you can override those exemptions. So by clicking this box here, you then have your other options that you have on Schedule C. So whether it be 100% fair market value, unknown, or other, and in other, you can literally just type whatever you want in here. And that's what then gets marked on your Schedule C. So you have the freedom to do whatever you want with these exemptions. As you can see, I just typed in something. Oh, it refreshed, sorry. I just typed in something and it just said type. But you can put, you have options to answer everything in here. Although property analysis doesn't really go anywhere, some people just really like the property overview. So we do have a print feature. I know some people just give these to the trustees directly. They'll just include it in there. The trustee likes to see them. It's just a nice clean overview without having everything split up on all the different schedules. And then so once your property is entered and you're moving back towards your claims, you'll notice in NextChapter, it's a learning curve, but people like it once they get used to it. We don't have a SOFA section. So much of the SOFA is just super redundant and you're just answering the same things you've already answered. You're entering in the same creditors you've already entered. So a lot of our SOFA can be answered directly from these claims. So let's say there's a foreclosure on this 100 Main Street property. If you add an action to here, then you have the option to say this is a foreclosure. You can put the date of the action and then you can type in anything you want. This goes to SOFA line 10, but if there's also a lawsuit involved already, then you can check that box and now the lawsuit goes to line 10. And when you save this and now you go down to enter in lawsuits, it's already there. I clearly use the same example every time, so it's repeated, but the lawsuits, they're pulling over. It pulled over that foreclosure. You still can enter in any lawsuit that you want, like if there's a divorce and it's not really tied to a claim, but this is just a way to not make you have to type in that property claim all over again just to get the lawsuit in there. Some other most commonly used SOFA questions would be payments in the last 90 days. So there's a field here for last payment date in every claim section. Until you put a last payment date in the last 90 days, you can't see it. But once you get that date in there, then you can fill out the rest of the SOFA again, so you don't have to enter in this creditor again. Then you have things like claim subject to set off, just things that really, again, pertain to the SOFA. In the SOFA review, every single question is accounted for in here with your question, your answer, quick links to revisit. And you can click every single orange question mark and it tells you step by step. Go to NextChapter, go to client profile, debtor addresses, add a prior address. So really helpful in here, but There might be instances too where, let's say it's like a utility payment in the last 90 days, then you do need to add it in here and you'd add in your utility payment, but then you can omit from E in the matrix. So it's going nowhere but the sofa. Beneath lawsuits, so again, you can add any of those lawsuits in there. And then you have executory contracts. So like I mentioned, if you've added any vehicle leases, they're already in here. They will be ready to go, but you can add other contracts and leases too. So you can add like any utility leases, timeshares. A lot of people ask for on the statement, because this is a 13, let me just change it to a 7 really quickly. If you're working on a chapter 7 in NextChapter, we are just collecting all of your intents throughout. So if you have like this secured claim here and you're telling us, that's why we ask what the intent is on here. So the intent's to reaffirm. We're taking all of this in your 7 and we're automatically generating a statement of intention in here. A lot of people ask why we're not showing the residential lease. It's because the statement of intention literally says, do not put a residential lease on here. So we get asked that a lot. So I just like to go over it. It's right here. Do not list real estate leases. So all of your other leases that you enter into executory contracts will show there. If you have this type as residential or real estate, it does not. Some people still insist. In that case, I just tell them put other. Anything with other, we don't really care what it is, and that all goes on the statement of intention should you be in one of those districts where you need to add that. The last thing I'll touch upon really quickly, so co-debtors, insiders, and notices, very self-explanatory. One of the cool features you can do with a co-debtor is that you can save a co-debtor here, and you can save them as a common co-debtor. What that does is saves them only as a common co-debtor for this case, not like your whole account, just Rosie Riveter. And then if you need to go add co-debtors to the claims, then you just pick from a drop-down, so you don't have to enter it in every single time. One other thing too is like when you're on your claims, you can add notice addresses to any of these. So every claim has an option to add a notice address that's associated with this particular claim. But if you have someone that you need to notice that isn't tied to a claim, these are notice only creditors. You can add as many as you want. They go on your matrix. One thing you can do in account settings is go to your common and default creditors tab. And there's a box here for a default creditor. If you have a creditor that you need to add in that notice only tab on every single case, check this box and it'll do it for you automatically. So like a lot of people have to do like their state treasurer's office or the IRS or something like that. If you don't want to enter it in every time, check the box. And that's where all of that stuff just came from that I have in here as my notices. Just be mindful, that's only going to be on all new cases going forward. It will not go fill, it's not going to go backfill anything. And you can still edit them and delete them. It's just a way for you to not have to type them in every single time.
Everybody, Spencer here. I'm going to be going over the income section. Okay. So as we dive into income, I kind of like to point out that there are a lot of variations for income. We do have a specific webinar for income, but I would like to go over a couple of the basics just so we can build a foundation. So the three different ways where we can enter income. So the first option we have would be to enter it as just one pay advice. This is really common if your debtor is on salary. Once you've made your selection here, you would enter your one pay advice. And because you had made that selection, the income calculator will use how often or how frequent the debtor is paid and use their income and use that to apply to the means test and to Schedule I. looking at the XYZ company, this is for all pay advices. This is a little bit more common for if your debtor is not paid as frequently. So once you've applied the frequency in which they are paid, you would go ahead and move forward with entering each of the pay advices manually by date. I would also like to point out that if the date is not in the 6 months prior to filing, it will not be applied to the means test, obviously. And you can choose which one of your pay advices you would like to use on the Schedule I moving forward. You can pick that pay advice that you want to use on Schedule I, or we'll use the most recent. And if your district does allow, there is an option here to use the 6 month average for the means test deductions. If you would not like to use the all pay advices option, we have the year to date subtraction option, where we would just ask that you enter the gross amount from your first pay advice beginning at the 6 months and the amount in your last pay advice. And the calculator will take those two and use the difference and divide it by 6 months. And if they're no longer employed, you can go ahead and check no longer employed and you'll be done. Any pay advices can be applied to Schedule I, excuse me. There are other options. If the debtor is self-employed, we would just ask for any gross receipts and business expenses. And that should get you started on income. Once again, I want to reiterate, we do have the ability to accommodate just about any way that you want to enter the income. Sometimes we just need to work with it a little bit to find the best method for your district. When you get into non-employment income, it's very similar to your employment income. We still have the same three ways to enter your income. A couple of things to point out would be that Social Security and also military disability benefits would be excluded from the means test. Also, your income for your non-employment, you do have the option to exclude from Schedule I. Also going to jump down to the expenses section. So in the expenses section, you do have a calculator that will update in real time as you apply to each field. Also, I want to point out that you'll see that some of the fields have an asterisk while others do not. So for example, the cost of care for ill, elderly, or disabled, those would be excluded from Schedule J. Those would go onto your means test, whereas the ones with the asterisks will be applied to Schedule J. And finally for me, we'd like to look in the miscellaneous section. I've gotten a couple of questions on this in the past. This is where you will make your selection for the attorney and credit counseling fees. You can create and add your attorney fees in your account settings. So you can actually have different defaults for if you're scheduling, or excuse me, for if you're filing for Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, and you can specify in this tab. And also once it's selected, you can still customize down here whether someone else is already paid, any variation that you might need. I think that covers it for my section. And also I'd just like to point out one more time that there is another webinar on the income section. So if you have any questions, you can check that out, or you can contact the support team.
Okay, moving along. I kind of already went over the SOFA review. So I'm just going to skip to means test, but do note we have a means test review that does the same thing as the SOFA review. But means test, we have your exemption from presumption. So this is going to be marked if you're a veteran. And also then again, remember in client profile filing info, if the nature of debt is business, then we'd automatically fill out that exempted form for you too. Other than that, for the means test qualifier, we're taking all of the income that you've entered into the income section, so that monthly average from the last 6 months to get that annual income figure. And then this is also why we need a residential address, so we can apply those state deductions and then also get like the median family income amount and the number of people in the household. So that's back in client profile, debtor profile. You told us how many people live in the household, and then you told us too that their residential address was in Ohio. So back to the qualifier, if you don't have to fill out the means test, you'd see a green thumbs up, and then means test questions would just be blank. You don't even have to do anything with it. In this case though, we are well above the median income, so we need to proceed to means test questions. Although I just showed you told us 3 people live in the house, you always, always, always need to answer this second question on means test questions. How many people can be claimed as exemptions? We don't know of those 3 how old they are. So the exemption limits that get automatically applied to your means test form is deemed based on how many are over 65 and under. Everything else, we've taken what you've put into the app, but you can override anything that you want. So if you didn't enter in any health savings accounts in any of the income, override it and put in the deductions. So anything you do in means test questions only affects your means test. It's not going back and doing anything that you've already entered into your case. There is a tool here where you would say override expenses from I and J. So this is used mostly like because as Spencer just went over income, if you're adding all pay advices, we average everything for the means test. However, the deductions are coming from the Schedule I pay advice because they're supposed to be forward looking. So if you didn't check this box to use the 6-month average, they would be coming from this Schedule I pay advice. You can override it though. So if you go back to means test and then go to means test questions, it has an option that says override from I and J. As soon as you click yes, that brings over all of the taxes, the involuntary deductions, everything from that Schedule I pay advice, but again, override them. Maybe the taxes were a lot higher the last 6 months. Maybe they were lower. Maybe you need to add in education expenses and you need to override these things from Schedule J, like charity. You can do anything you want in here. And again, I and J will remain unfazed. This is just the means test. Another thing we do is for future payments on debts due in 60 months is we pull in any claim you've already entered. So if you enter in vehicles or homes, any secured claims, we pull them over here, but we only do it upon like the initial adding. So if you add, like if I go now back to this 100 Main Street and I edit the monthly values and stuff, it's not going to change your means test. They stop talking once it's added the first time because odds are you're editing the claim and you're editing the means test and they need to stop talking to each other. So these are pulled over upon the initial adding to the claim section, but then you can, it's going to take your monthly amount that you've entered in there and automatically multiply it by 60. Maybe they only have 48 months left on this one though. So upon changing it, it's going to change your total. It's going to keep your total future due, but now your monthly payments are higher because that due is only over 48 months. You can also amortize things. So if we have this debt, but they're at a 2.5% interest rate and calculate, it's going to give you that amortized amount that you can say use amortized amount and that replaces that. So really lets you put whatever you want onto your means test form, and it lets you put a cure amount too if you owe any arrearages. Just put in that arrearage amount here and we'll automatically divide by 60 for that cure amount. Definitely, absolutely preview the form. I have had people before that are, they're a little upset their means test form is blank. It's because they didn't tell us how many people are over 65 and under 65. So absolutely give it an overview to see all the figures that are going in. There's the number of people. We have your, like the IRS standards for food and clothing, and then all of those payments you put in, any cure amounts, just preview. And then note 2, we have a means test review. Oops, I accidentally made this screen small. So means test review works identical to SOFA review in that we're showing you all the questions from both forms, your answer, and then links to revisit, as well as help center articles. There are a few things, like let's go to the second form. And let's see up here where it's like food and clothing and stuff. So these food and clothing ones, they have links to the IRS standards. So you can see what we're using to get those. This is going to be any means test form after November 1st, and then it'll just give you links to open up those tables and based on like the size of your house and where you're located. Once you are done with your review and you get to the final means test calculation and presumption, if you need to add any special circumstances, you can. These do, they'll deduct figures automatically. So if I save a large special circumstance, it does deduct it and it does adjust the income. This is a test example, so they have a ton of disposable income. But normally you get a green thumbs up here showing that everything's good with the calculation and presumption. And then of course we'll include both means test forms with your petition. I'm in a chapter 7, but if you have any interest in chapter 13 cases with the chapter 13 add-on, we do have a plan calculator and a plan, your local plan. I would recommend going to help and then webinars and just watching a specific chapter 13 webinar. It's pretty helpful.
Okay, so the next section you'll see is additional documents. The first tab here is the court forms library. This basically houses most of your local forms for your district. You'll see them under district forms here. We also have a few standard federal forms that are just not automatically created when you're filling out the information on this left-hand side. But if you need these federal forms, you can click this button here. And just by answering the few questions that we have on here, that will create the document and you can save it to client document storage. Something else to note is like if you're filling out this form and then you maybe miss a question, you saved it, but you missed a question or you want to change a question, once you go back into creating this, it will have automatically saved all of the information that you input. So if you just have to change one question, it will automatically be filled in here. You can just change it really quickly and resave it. For the forms that you don't see create next to, those are forms that you just have to manually fill out and save to your client document storage. And you can do that by just clicking on there you go. Clicking on the box and then clicking download. And from there, you'll be able to create the form. After that, you'll see all these documents that you might have stored in client document storage. You can save anything in here. You can save a PDF, you can save a picture as a JPEG, you can save a Word document, whatever you need to for whatever reason. We do allow you to save them with certain event codes. So say you loaded your credit counseling certificate here, you can assign an event code to it. You won't want to assign that one. Certificate of Credit Counseling. And this can be filed with your petition then as a separate event code. So it will be filed as separately from the packet, but with the initial filing. And then anything that you do download in NextChapter will automatically save in your download history. So I'm just gonna go down to download and print and show you how you can download those forms. So when you click download and print, you'll see all of your available forms and documents in this left-hand column. So this will be anything that NextChapter has automatically generated, but then it will also be any forms that you might have saved in your client document storage. From here to download and print, you'll want to select from this middle dropdown, depending on what you're trying to file. Most often, you probably want to choose complete bankruptcy petition, and that will pull over your statement of Social Security, your creditor matrix. This will be all of the automatically generated forms from NextChapter, but if you need to pull in any of these other forms and download them and see how they look with your packet, you can just drag and drop them anywhere within the petition. You can also rearrange the schedules for however you need to. And then once you feel like you're ready, like your packet looks good, you're ready to download, you'll just come to this bottom right here and click download. Because I chose complete bankruptcy petition, that included the statement of Social Security. So it's asking me for the client's full social one more time. That's just a security measure. We don't store the full social anywhere on the app. So that's just why you're being asked to enter that one more time. Once that's entered, you'll see you can remove the e-signature line. So if you want to print off your documents and you need your client to come in and sign everything, you can just remove those signatures. And then once this information is filled out, you'll be able to click download. And from there, you'll be able to view your documents. Something else here. So let's say you just wanted to download one form. Let's say you just wanted to download this statement of Social Security. You'll go to the right-hand column and select that only. So if you see nothing here and only the statement of Social Security here, that's good because that's only what you want. So from there, you can click download and then enter the social one more time. Lastly, if you want to download amended forms, you can just select amended from the middle dropdown and then drag over the forms that you've changed. And then from there, you can download them.
Okay, last step is going to be how to actually file everything. So since we're in here really quickly, I'm going to download the statement of Social Security to my computer. If your district requires that SSM form, you will need to download it prior to filing. It's the one thing you can't really upload to client document storage, but all you need to do is download it, and then I'm just going to save it to my desktop really quickly. So once you have that, and then like Kelly showed you in your client document storage, just make sure you have anything else in here that you want to file with your case. So we have a credit counseling certificate. These means test forms, I'll kind of show you what to do with those. We'll break those out of your packet automatically. Those are like NextChapter standard forms. Let's pretend this is a rights and responsibilities form. And I'll rename it just to eliminate confusion. But everything else in here can just kind of hang out. We don't really want to file anything. Unless you have, what some people do is, I'm going to rename this one too. Let's say you have like a legal description. So you can file that with your case. That would just be anything that you want to merge like into your filing packet and not something the court requires as a separate event code. So for this, like a legal description is something I just want to file with AB. I'll show you how to do that. When you're ready to file, you're looking for 7 green check marks to make sure you have the bare minimum. We're making sure their credit counseling's done. You have your ECF info in there. Your attorney fees are all selected. This one is just because I have a different district than what I'm filing in. So if you file it in multiple districts, you might come across this. It's because I have California Northern, but I chose like Georgia credentials. So I'm just going to ignore that for the time being, but that's what that means. When you're assembling your packet to file, it works exactly like download and print. These are all of your available forms, meaning everything in client document storage and everything NextChapter creates for you. The middle gets merged and filed as your petition packet. The right gets filed, but they get filed as those separate events. So when you're filing, you're either going to have an option in here for complete bankruptcy petition or a template. The template is if your district, like this Northern District of California, they make them file their means test forms and their disclosure separate. A lot of districts just keep it all in one general packet. If there's a template, you always need to choose the template, and we hid the complete option, so there won't be any confusion. You can also file emergencies. It's just going to pull over the bare minimum for an emergency filing, but let's say like maybe your AB is done too. You could drag that in if you wanted. For this case, I'm just going to do the Chapter 7, like the full petition template. So now I have my packet in the middle. If you want, for some reason, you could reorder it. You could take things out. Majority of the time, you're just going to leave it as is, but the options are there. Let's pretend then that I wanted to do that legal description. Where is it? It's not showing me for some reason. It should be showing over here, and then you would just drag that right beneath like Schedule AB. So if you had something that you wanted to attach, like here's a monthly business income and expenses. For sake of not making it confusing, let's just put that beneath I. So now with my Schedule I have that monthly business income and expenses attached. You don't want to do that with things like a 13 plan. Your court's not going to want the plan in your petition. That needs to be a separate event. So just be mindful that like anything you're dragging in here should only be like additional information to your schedules. Over here, I have my means test forms. And then the statement of Social Security is always going to want you to add a file. You cannot drag and drop from over here. It's just going to go into the wrong place. This ensures that it gets filed properly and redacted with the court site. So here's my SSN form that I downloaded. I'm going to open that and attach it in here, and you'll be able to tell it's done because it doesn't say add file anymore. If your court has other questions for those event codes, like this one wants to know who's this credit counseling for, if it's for the debtor, the joint debtor, or both, then you can answer those additional questions in here. Once that's good to go, you're going to proceed to the File tab. It's just going to say make sure your packet's assembled. And then from here, you're going to choose your division, and then you're going to enter in that social because this opens the case with the court site. So that's why you're entering it in again. Before you file, though, you always have the option to preview. So previewing is going to show you your full petition. You can click through all the forms. If you collapse this, you'll see my means test form is separate. My 122A2 is separate. My disclosure is separate. My SSN form is separate. So this is just a good way to go through everything, double check that social, make sure everything looks good, and then you can start filing. So upon starting filing, there's nothing you can do. There's no like cancel button. You will, I mean, if you needed to, if you did it on accident, you could log in directly to the court site. But majority of the time you should avoid that. Since the courts only allow one login at a time, it will kick us out and you'll get an error message. But once you're filing, there's nothing else you really need to do. You're going to get a progress bar on here. We will email you a copy of everything you have filed and give you a verification. If for some reason something does not file, we tell you. So if you didn't let us finish the filing, you logged into the court on accident, we didn't upload your creditor matrix, we tell you. So in that email, then you'd be like, okay, I need to go download that matrix and get it uploaded. So we'll let you know what's going on. On here, when it's done, you do get a hooray message, and then everything updates up here. It would update to filed. It goes in filing information, change it, it enters a case number, it puts that filing date in there. If you are on one of our annual plans, your notices process hourly, so you'll start to see your notices come through. And there's really nothing else you need to do at that point. We also save a copy and download history of everything that was filed. So it has in parentheses filed, just to kind of keep you, in case you ever need to reference exactly what you filed. That said, when you're on that filing, that final page, you don't have to sit and watch it file. You can go work on another case. You can leave NextChapter, you can close your computer. There's really nothing that you need to do to stay on there. I know, especially getting started, it's like a comfort thing, and that's fine. But people have called and said they accidentally X'd out of their browser, and it's fine, it's still filing. That's pretty much it for the full demo walkthrough. As I mentioned earlier, if you ever need to, you can use our in-app chat. You can chat with us. You can also reach us at support@nextchapterbk.com if you need anything. But we have a lot of really great resources online. We have our help center. We have webinars. We have short training videos. The help center right now, we're working slowly but surely to add all of new graphics because we made, like this one's done, since we made the changes to the UI, most of the functionality is the same, it just looks different. So if you need help with anything until we get all of those updated, just let us know. But thank you all so much for taking the time today. We really appreciate it, and we will hope to talk to you soon. Bye.